Greetings, everybody. Good to see you all again. Another part of kind of my real estate series of discussions with some of the great minds of real estate around town, around the country. Super excited. I feel like David Letterman today. If you guys haven't seen his show, My Guest Needs No Introduction. This is the Real Estate Houston version. My two guests today, need no introduction. I've got Jimmy Franklin from the Franklin team, brokered by EXP, Nimesh Patel Group, Remax Fine Properties, two icons of Houston real estate. I'm super privileged to be the one talking to them today. And so we're gonna kind of go on a various kind of array of topics. I'm gonna be lobbing y'all some questions, but I want to just kind of kick it off. We did a series recently with Nimesh, so I'm gonna start with Jimmy. Let's start with your background. Like, where did it all start? Where did real estate show up in your life? Give 30 seconds about
30 seconds.
Growing up. Well, you growing up, and then we'll give you a lot of time. For the real estate side.
Come on, icon. Slacker, college dropout. Nothing worked in my 20s. Got laid off. I've told this story so many times. You start repeating stories that you've told to people, and you're like, man, dude, I've heard this story. But this one is pretty cool. My wife and I bought a house. We were closing on the house, and it was my 27th birthday, and my boss brought me into the office and said, business is off, you got to go. Oof. And so it was the 80s, which was the beginning of some bad years, and I ended up trying real estate because nothing else had ever worked. So it wasn't like, I think I'd be good at this. I was like, no, I think I'll just try this and see if it works. I had no sales background, zero sphere of influence, and that's how I got started. There was no vision, no plan like you're going to hear he had.
But. Oh, I'm with you. I'm the same as you.
And so that jumped you in. Give us kind of it's part of the journey, mega team, Remax franchise, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, when I got my license in October of '82, 40 years ago, next month, really, I was a long way from any of that stuff. Like if I kind of broke my career into 4 10-year increments, 4 10-year very distinct periods of time, and the first 10 years was just survival. Like every commission that I got during those years was a electric bill waiting to be paid, and because number one, that was an era where even the most successful agents didn't really make all that much money if you think about it. Remax, where I ended up in '86, I don't think they had anything over the 100% club until the '90s, and so because why would they? There's a couple of guys like Ronnie Matthews who would have been there, but so it wasn't like the same thing that we know about today. But those were my first 10 years, and I remember in 1991 getting a commission check. I remember the address today, and it was the first commission I'd ever gotten in 9 years. It was my 9th year in the business. That hey, I can just actually put this in my checking account for a minute. I don't have anything to do right now. It was like that.
Finally ahead.
No bills.
Yeah, at that moment.
That's awesome.
And then things got a lot better in the '90s. I didn't really become a team, really, per se. I got an assistant somewhere in the mid-'90s, and I'm a little bit too busy to handle this now. So that really wasn't a team. That didn't really happen until the 2000s. And every time, and again, I'm guilty of not having the vision that my kids have since they took over, in growing the team with a vision. I kind of grew it almost reactively. Like, I'm so busy, I have no life, and so hey, I think I'll get some help, and then I would get more business, and then I would get more help. Yep. and it kind of worked like that, And I always tried to keep the team really small because I didn't want to be responsible for someone coming in and not having enough business. And I didn't have enough. I don't think I was. I never felt like I was, proactive and visionary enough to be able to bring enough value. I found out in time as I look back that was a mistake. I could have really, done some better things, but that's life, right?
Of course.
You learn from, you look back and go, oh, I would have done that differently, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
Nimesh, give us your version, the backstory. Walk us through your journey.
Well, I think exactly how Jimmy just said. That's kind of how I was. I didn't come into this. I was in a different field completely. I got my license just because there was nothing else to do. And I was like, oh, this is easy to get into. Let me just get into that and try to do some investments and maybe make some money down the road. Or when I do have money down the road, I'll need my license to, build my portfolio. So I just got into it. But, I like what he said. He was reactionary. And so when I look at that, I look at someone like him, and it reminds me of me as well, is that I used to use my talent at the time. I wasn't a visionary. I didn't plan enough. Obviously, hindsight's 2020, and for me, this is my 21st year going into this. But just started doing well and enjoyed it. The main thing was I ended up enjoying the career versus thinking that this was just a stopgap for me. And as I started enjoying the career, then I started getting into it more. Maybe 7, 8, 9 years into it, I started looking into purposely trying to form what my next 5 years, my next 10 years were going to be. And I did look up to people like him, and he called out Ronnie Matthews, people like Ronnie Matthews. These guys have been there, paved the way, created great names, and created the way. So I would watch what they would do and see if I can put my own spin on it. And now, I go around and I teach people how to build teams, and I'm trying to get them to stop being so reactionary, like he said, and try to get them to have a vision. So what took me maybe 15 years to really get into, I'm trying to get these guys to do it within 2 to 3 to 4 years,
So if I saw both of you guys in a bar, I'd be like polar opposites, right? But as I've got to know both of you and your stories, there's some major common denominators between you two. The first of, Remax was a part of your journey, right? That's
Right.
Interesting. But to me, what stood out more than anything is how much your families have been integrated in your businesses, right? From the launch, your parents were so involved. Jimmy, your children are like now the fiber of the business, right? Talk to me a little bit about kind of how that's helped shape your careers, because I think that's unique. A lot of, especially agents that are siloed nowadays and all about their personal brand, a family value, a family-driven organization is, not the common. But Jimmy, let's start with you. Let's talk about what that.
well, when Sarah went to Texas A&M, sorry man, and she graduated in 06, and there wasn't, neither one of my kids were, we were really close, but real estate wasn't discussed a whole lot. It wasn't part of our conversation. I don't think there was Sarah had worked for me a little bit in high school, but it was a runner job. And she got out with an economics degree, got a job she didn't really like. I said, why don't you come, after about a year, I said, why don't you leave the company and come with me? And, kind of had to talk her into it. And so she came over and gradually, grew. She always did a great job looking after me, looking after my business and all that. But then the sales, the being an agent thing actually came like 4 or 5 years later. Like she was more administration, and kind of management. And it was a reactionary moment. One of my agents decided to go out on their own, and I said, I think we can make this happen. And I had to talk her into it, and she was great. And we never looked back. Andrew had another path. He scored $1 million on his SAT, and sent him to a really great Eastern school. Wanted to be an investment banker. Did that for 5 years, and you work about 120 hours a week in that world, and So anyway, I don't know. He had a moment where he was like, "Yeah, I think I'm done here." I said, because he'd been to some cool places that he figured he'd never end up here. He'd never end up back here, right? He'd been in San Francisco, New York City. You figure, okay, once you've done that, but he was happy to come back, anxious to come back, and the transformation of the team from me running it to them running it happened then around 2014, which was a time I was sort of ready to step back after doing this, and unlike a lot of big teams, I'd really not ever gotten out of production. I'd never done that. I'd negotiated contracts and went on listings and all that stuff. So I was ready to not do that anymore. I was ready. I was burned out, and I didn't have to work anymore. So it was a perfect time. And with a lot of transitional family situations, you don't really know how it's going to go, right? We were talking about the McNairs. Like sometimes you hand off somebody to a total incompetent next generation person. The person that built the business. The next generation down is buffoons, right?
Yeah.
And in our case, you assume it's gonna, you assume who these people are, right? You know your children, but you don't really know how business is going to get handled. And not very many, really big producing teams or agents or whatever have been able to, to hand it off the next level down, and it really continued on and mattered. They matter as much, whereas they were just way better at it than that part of it, the business part of it. I'm not saying they were better at the relationship part of it. That was a strength of mine, but they were really good at the business part of it, and so it went the totally different direction as the Houston Texans did. So
we'll save that for another topic for sure. Nimesh, family integration in your business. Let's talk about that.
I mean, from day one, when I said that I was getting my license just for the heck of it, well, guess who went and got it with me at the exact same time? My mom.
Yeah.
Can you imagine after graduating and going through life in your 20s, and then you realize you're going back to school with your mom? So, my mom and I both went and got it together, and she wanted something to do. But the thing about it was, I trusted her because she had run businesses before. She had run a very, very highly successful travel agency prior to the internet really making things difficult. But why not learn from her and do this with her? So we kind of did it together, and then her and I were the mom and son team. And there's a special bond, obviously, with family, but there's a trust factor there too. And I'm not saying that you can't have partners that you trust and all that, but in the end, when your family is family, no matter how much, I fight more with them,
sure,
but I still trust them and they trust me. So I think that went well. And then when my brother came back from San Francisco, we were looking into businesses, and my mom just kind of put us together and said, why don't you guys just join each other, and his strengths versus my weaknesses and my strengths versus his weaknesses. That went well.
Yeah.
And then we made our dad retire. I remember it was around 2000, I want to say around 2011 or 12, we made our dad retire, and he did, but he was bored at home, and him and my mom sitting at home all day long is probably not the greatest thing in the world. So he started coming in, and he's my accountant, and so he started coming in and helping us with some of his business sense, and there's a massive trust factor overall, and like Jimmy said, or like you said, it's about values. One thing is that I got my values from my parents and my family. Well, we continue our values into our business, and you don't have to sit there and hope that somebody has the same values. You know that they do, and that's what made it more successful, I think.
Well, Jimmy, and you were kind of broaching the subject of like real estate is still about relationships,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
so the family relationship, is the core, right? And if you can extrapolate that through how you operate, how you do business, the service you provide, the mindset you have on a day-to-day, you can see it translates into success. Yeah, there's so many factors you never know, right? But if it starts to kind of really start humming, it's a beautiful thing. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So let's talk about, the core, the tactical. I'm a strong agent. I'm rocking and rolling. I've shifted gears to building a team. Jimmy touched on that a little bit. I want to hear kind of both of your perspectives. Nimesh, we can start with you about like, what is that? You coach very successful teams. You've overseen people build, great teams under your kind of oversight. What does that shift look like from I'm an independent agent and now I want to get that team going and growing? And I want to hear both of you guys, of course.
Well, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, bottom line is, if people are in growth mode, right, you got to know what they're content with. If they're content with where they are and they want to be solo, that's fine, no problem. I don't push anybody into it. But if they're constantly in growth mode and they want to expand and they want to do more, and then the other thing that he talked about is they want to be with their families too. They want to have a work-life balance, and everybody knows as a successful real estate agent, you don't have a work-life balance if you're really good. So you start putting things in, and the number one word that I like to use is leverage. You start hiring to your deficiencies so you can have leverage. I wanted to bring up also again about Jimmy is that he said that he kind of stepped back in 2014, right?
Yeah.
Around then. Well, one thing that I still coach everybody, and heck, I'm still trying to, get to myself is the sign of a great business is when you can step away from it and it continues to grow, right? And so, with whether it's his kids or whatever, however he's set up with his team, he can walk away from it for a month, 6 months, whatever it is, and it's going to continue to grow. And so that's kind of what I try to focus on with these guys is, hey, you want to continue to grow, you can't sit there and negotiate every single contract. I do the same thing with you. I'm with you. I still do so many of the little things that I'm like, it's not that it's beneath me. It's not the word at all. It's that what's my best use of time, and whether it's revenue, trying to get more revenue or lead generation, as in this business. Where's my best use of time? Not doing the back end paperwork. Well, let's hire to that. Let's hire to this. Let's hire to that. And then as people continue to see your vision and you set out a goal, then hopefully they can get you there. So instead of having 60 hours a week, now you have 2 people, you have 120 hours a week. 3 people, you have 100, more obviously. So that's kind of the growth that I try to push at.
Jimmy, your version, agent to teams.
Agent to teams. Well, again, I started out like, I was getting very, very successful. I needed some help. It started out, administration help. And I was, one of the things I was really good at is, I guess you might call it paying as better than the market, and then trusting, and then getting really great people and trusting them and not having to really manage them because they were, treat them right. I watched somebody work a totally different way, a totally different method. Watch that, and I go, because I was always a pretty good sponge for, and I used to call Ronnie up. I'm jumping off the subject a little bit, but I used to call Ronnie up and get suggestions, and I was a really good at not thinking that I knew anything, and I'm gonna copy people that know what they're doing. And I was very fortunate that he was so, willing to share information, even though our paths crossed in competition.
Yeah.
He was willing to do that, and then I watched someone else when it came to assistants and all that, how they did it, and it was a revolving door. It's like that may be a more economical. That may be what the accountant would tell you, like, hey, pay as little as you can, and then just move them in and out. And it's like, I don't want to do that. It's not worth it. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to it's not fair to your time. You might have a 1% or 2% better margin at the end of the year, but so I did that. Now on the teams, I think he's going to be better. As far as like training and all that. Woefully weak. I'm willing to tell you what I was good at, what I wasn't. I did get some good agents that, to be honest, didn't really need much training. They just were good at it. If I'd have tried to grow a team with who I was 20 years ago when my team started growing, if I'd have tried to grow a team with who I was then, it probably wouldn't have happened, or I would have had to change a lot. I watched my kids and they embrace coaching and growth, personal growth, business growth, and I watched how they do it, and they've hired. I mean, you talk about some of the things they've done from a standpoint of, leveraging their time and their business. With sales managers and presidents of just fantastic people. And so that's what they've done, and they have a whole system in place. I didn't have that. I didn't do that, right? I came up in a different era. I was telling you the story, and this will make you probably wonder why you brought me in today. But after I turned the team over to my kids, Andrew was on one of those groups, around the country. I don't know where he connected with his people. It might have been, like a Keller Williams thing. But anyway, he had, they would do chats and ask for suggestions. Really, really great thing, a great way of doing things that we didn't have, We didn't have it, but we didn't have it pre-internet.
Yeah.
Pre-internet, you didn't have a chat room that you could.
Right.
So anyway, he said, man, we did, and this was like the first year after I was gone. He said, we did about 400 transactions, X amount of, $100 million, whatever. And we don't have a CRM. Does anybody have any suggestions? And one of the guys that we got introduced to said, dude, you don't have a CRM. and Andrew told me that. He told me that story, and I go, what's a CRM? Anyway, so like I said, there's a lot of things I did right. Obviously, I couldn't have done that to get to where I ended up, but some of the things you ask isn't one of them, or there's a couple of things that you ask about, like training and growing teams and all that type of thing.
So, good sort of segue into some of, Nimesh, you're 21 years, Jimmy coming up on 40, incredible careers already, right? And, you're not even done, right? And so what do you think you've seen over the eras that's changed, right? Obviously technology, we know that. And I don't want to get in that rabbit hole. I'm just saying, the way we operate, what's changed, what hasn't changed? Some of the fundamentals are still the same to this day.
Yeah, I'll keep it simple. Obviously, like you said, technology, which has made our lives easier. It's kind of funny that Jimmy's talking about a CRM. Heck, I've been successful for a while, and I just literally got a CRM recently.
No, see, I feel better now.
My CRM was a spreadsheet in my head,
But I had a chalkboard.
Yeah.
There you go.
But I'll tell you right now, and I bet you he agrees with me 100%. You know what hasn't changed? Relationships.
Well,
there you
look
go.
at that.
Look at that. See?
That was magical.
Relationships haven't changed, and I'll tell you, I don't put emphasis on. I don't make number one priorities on how much money I'm going to make on this or what the return is, anything like that. Obviously that's in the list of priorities, but the number one priority is making sure that my relationships stay great.
Right.
Whether it's with customers, consumers, community, builders, other agents, other brokerages, lenders, everything. I just want the relationships. I want those more than anything I want on my team. That's it.
Even in those years I was telling you about where I, didn't make a whole lot of money because there really wasn't a lot of money to be made, and it was a terrible decade in Houston. And I was starting out I had all like 4 or 5 things in a row that would just pretty much guaranteeing me that I wasn't gonna do a lot of business. But the one thing these fundamental things that I did that caused the 90s to be a totally different decade for me, and then the 2000s to take me into another stratosphere, was things I did then, even when I was, every transaction was super important, to be able to live,
Right.
Which was never telling a client something that you thought was in your best interest, just to have a transaction. And if I had to tell somebody they shouldn't move forward on this, or they shouldn't sell their house, you have no business selling your house because you can't even qualify for this house, much less this more expensive house you're thinking about doing. And that came back to me many times. I didn't do it for that reason. I just did it because It's
You,
just
you did it because that's the guy you are, and that's how you created your name. Because to this day, I still teach people the same way,
Yeah.
and I give them examples of how many people. I was more proud of the stories of people I talked out of buying houses, or talked out of a lease, or talked out of anything because it wasn't the right situation for them. But that's because you and I both listen to what their wants and needs are, anticipate them, and then try to give them the best advice ever.
Yeah.
And that's exactly you creating that foundation, and that's what I've tried to live my life by this whole time.
And I've told people that I know sometimes it's hard not to try to think about this as one situation, one transaction. But number one, you really shouldn't do that if that's not really how you feel is truly what you would do in that situation.
Right.
It's how you should look at it. Like, would I really do this?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't, but I want this guy to do it. If you can't, look at it that way, but it will, and it's a slower play,
Yeah.
but it'll come back to you many times over, and then it'll start to multiply, right? I mean, because that's what the sphere of influence does. It should exponentially increase each year because more people. Like if you think about it, I started out, my sphere of influence was like 3 or something, in 1982, and then it should be more the next year and more the next year, and then grow like the old multiplication, like the national debt, just start to grow and multiply and all that type of thing because there's more people referring out more people if you did them right in the first place, and then all of a sudden it takes on a life of its own, and all those things that you did back in the early days of doing things right and treating people right and not looking at them like they're coming in for a used car into the place, and they're going to walk out the door, and I got to sell them this thing right now. I got to sell them this car right now because if I don't, they're gone.
Right.
You've treated them like a relationship, like a friend, like a confidant, then it'll pay off, many times over.
And when you say that, when you're actually being authentic like that, people can see it. Because how many people can see when a realtor is not doing well, they literally are like, okay, I need a sale, I need a paycheck, I needed this. And you can see right through those agents, and it's just not the best scenario. And then and what's worse is if that consumer can't see through them and they're about to make a horrible decision with their own money. So the people can see the authenticity, and then, like you said, it exponentially grows from there. I'll tell you a quick, funny story. Well, not funny, but quick story. This was about 2006, right before when you guys are giving everybody money all over the place.
I remember.
Yeah, so I had this client come in, and she just got out of college, and she had a really good job. She was making right around $65,000 a year. So like 2006. And she lived off of Washington, inside the Loop. So that's when the townhomes market started really going crazy. And she wanted to buy a $350,000 townhome, but she's only making $65,000. And I'm thinking to myself, that's not going to cut it. Yeah. And as she drives up to my office, what does she have? She has a nice new BMW, so she's got those payments. Oh. She's going to be at the bars and doing all that people do, in their 20s, just graduating. So I just kept talking to her. We found a place. It was literally like $325, I believe. And I just said, this is not going to work. She goes, well, I'm approved for it. I said, well, your lender's not, your lender's not really caring about you. I am. Let's keep talking. I kept talking. She wanted to put in the offer. Finally, you know what I said? And this is just one of the weirdest things that I did. I just said, can I speak to your parents, please? I mean, she's an independent person. She's an adult. She's making her own money. But I said, I need to speak to your parents. And she literally got her parents to come meet me. And I talked to them, and they fell in love with me, like almost to the point where, if there was a chance, they might have wanted me to marry her. I don't know, But basically, after I had the conversation of why I didn't think it was the right situation for her on the pricing and all of that, and what her mortgage is going to be, her parents ended up saying, we got her, we understand your concern, we got her, so let's go ahead and move forward. So they moved forward. Then I found out later that they owned a big chain of dog places all around Houston. Well, they ended up buying a massive house from. They ended up buying a house, which I never even knew them before, So it comes back.
I mean, my takeaway from what you guys are saying is, a long-term outlook for your own career compounds, right? your actions along the way will compound into
compounds is
a
good.
long-term, success, right?
Yeah.
Versus the short-term, like, transactional relationships,
Yes.
right? You
Right.
got to think the long haul, right? I mean, I'm sure, Jimmy, you've had the luxury of serving a family, not only the parents but the kids in the real estate needs over the time, right? Or at least your team did.
It always
right?
feels great.
Right. Yeah. And so, like, that's long term. You're really thinking, and an average home owner, 4 houses in their lifetime, right? In our industry. So, like, we're really with them for the long journey, right? I'm going to shift a little bit more. So, along the way, we've all got the war stories, right? Give me one challenge, one thing that stands out in the career path and how we overcame it. Who wants to start?
Go ahead, I can go on and on.
All right, well, give me one that stands out.
What stands out for, this is more on a broker level. So as a broker, I want to share. I want to share as much as I can. I learned from so many people ahead of me. I'm still learning every day with people that are doing well. And so I want to be able to share out to agents. And I couldn't sleep at night because I wanted it so bad for that agent. I kept trying to train them, teach them, making them, trying to do certain things to be successful. And they wouldn't do it, or they just weren't successful at it. And I was having a hard time sleeping. I really was. And then somebody told me this, or I read it, and I finally got to the point where I realized that if I want it more for them than they want it for themselves, I'm never gonna, it's never gonna happen. And once I realized that I've got to stop wanting it more for the other people than they want it for themselves, that's when I was able to sleep at night better. And so that's just one of my broker challenges, of knowing that people that want it, they're going to come and get it. If the people that want to get out there and mastermind or talk to, doesn't matter what brokerage you're from, what brand you're from, just people in the industry, people like you, people like title companies, other people from around the country. Once I started understanding how to mastermind with like-minded people, then I was better.
Yeah, you can teach, a lot of things, how to read a contract, how to negotiate, et cetera. You can't teach mindset.
You
right?
can't.
You
No.
can't teach work ethic, right? Those are things that an individual has to carry, right? And ultimately, like, they're our own aspirations. Like, clearly there's worker bees in the world for a reason, right? Not everybody wants to strive for the top. And, that's just how the world works. Jimmy, give me a challenge.
What did I have to overcome?
Give me some, a challenge along the way in the journey, how you overcame it.
Well, I mean, I had a whole decade of just basically overcoming. I don't know. Poverty sounds a little bit, over dramatic, but it's pretty emotionally and physically exhausting to be broke, and to have kids when you're broke and wonder if you're going to be able to make it. So I had to just overcome. And the joke I've told, it's probably not a joke, but it sounds funny, is that people would ask me, hey, how did you make it? How did you get successful? And I said, well, I was never qualified enough to do anything else to leave the industry when it was extremely difficult to make a living. So I just, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. And then eventually I got really good at it.
Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking about, what I had to overcome was, besides not having really overly qualified to do anything else, and coming into this horrible decade and in what turned out to be a tough decade in the 80s, and not having any starting from scratch, no mentorship, by the way, in that era, nothing. You at least the office I was at, before Remax, and Remax was pretty much great office, great situation. But by that time I was kind of rolling anyway, right? But I didn't. I came from no sales experience, and I was, I'm not now. I've grown out of that, but I was pretty, I was a little petrified of people, right? I mean, I wouldn't say I was one-on-one, I was okay, but selling, talking to a stranger about trying to get them, talking to them about doing something, and me being the guy they did it with, that was tough for me, early on. So I had to overcome all that. Yeah. And I had to do that on my own.
Absolutely.
Can I ask him a question?
Please.
I was just wondering, because again, you and I, we joke around about all this, like you and I have similar, stories and similar things. I remember back in the day when I had to, some coach came in to speak at my brokerage at one time, and when I was an agent, and they said that you need to have a sales pitch. Mm-hmm. And I was petrified because I'm not a salesperson. Even though this is what we are, or technically that's, we're a sales agent and this is our position, I am the worst person in the world at sales. And in fact, I walk into a car dealership, the car costs $30,000. My brother will walk out of there paying $27,000. I'll walk in there, it's $30,000. I'll pay $32,000 because I feel bad for somebody or another, right? So
that's
I'm the worst,
me, man.
Yeah, I'm the worst when it comes to my own stuff, right?
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was I just started becoming way more just being real, being authentic, being myself, and I just kept telling people I don't have a sales pitch. And one day that is your sales pitch. Your sales pitch is being honest, being truthful, being that. So I'm just kind of wondering if that was the same thing with you.
So
never turned into a salesman, right?
1984, 85 was my first office, which was Century 21, and they say, and nothing against these guys who come in and tell you how to do scripted things. It's just not for me. Mm-hmm. But it was Tommy Hopkins, and he was, I remember where it was, right on the corner of 290, Brook Hollow, in the corner of 290 and 610. He was in a hotel, deal, and so I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I scraped up $40 to go to this, and and I came out of there going, I got no, if this is what you have to. Because one of the lines was, okay, you take them into the third house. This is the one you want them to buy, and they walk out on the patio, and you say, can't you just smell the steaks cooking? And that's what you do. And I'm sitting there going, I'm dead. If this is what I have to, if this is who I have to be, I just can't do it. I couldn't form those words if I wanted to.
You're not scripted.
And so I think that scripts are fine for some people, but and I think you kind of have to be yourself, right? And he and I went that route, and it worked for us. And there are probably people that, it's probably good for, but you have to decide that. And I walked out of there, thinking, I hope. And I'd been at it a few years, and by that time I could, okay, I think I can. I've done enough transactions where I realized this is probably not necessary.
Right.
Because if it is, I can't do it. And they had already told me in the early stages, they showed you how to do scripts on cold calls, like getting on a phone and calling people. And I remember I tried that once or twice, and man, this is worse. This is horrible.
It's tough.
And I couldn't do it.
So couple like takeaways. Authenticity at its core, at the end of the day, is one of the key factors, right?
Time out.
Yeah.
Can I hire you to just rewrite what I say?
I'm happy to.
Right? Like I have a lot of stuff in my head, and I put it out there. But if I just send you like video clips of myself, can you rewrite it so then I can put it into a magazine?
Yeah. Well, I could send him my stuff, and then he'd change the wording and make it a lot better, like compounding versus whatever it was I said. That was much better.
Well, then also
authenticity at its core. Like Rachel, I need you to write that down. Yeah. Authenticity at its core.
Yeah, but when you say it, it doesn't sound as authentic.
That's true. That's true.
You sound scripted.
Yeah, that sounds scripted. Hey, I can still smell the steaks.
And the other thing is there's this great book called Outliers, and Malcolm Gladwell, if you ever read it, right? So it's this kind of rule of 10,000 hours, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't start hitting a groove in whatever you're working on, whether it's they talk about athletes and careers and whatever, right? But 10,000 hours is what it takes for you really to hit that next level, right? which, you know, in a career that's 5-6 years, right? Consistency. Jimmy, it sounds like that's when things started turning from the day you were first, right?
That's exactly right.
And so, you know, I think, you know, repetition, authenticity, and then the time, right? Which is hard for most new agents, right? They can't see that far because they're living paycheck to paycheck. They need to see that, okay, I need to get one deal, right? But this is a career, right? Real estate is a career, and it can be very lucrative, you know. And I'm sitting at a table, you know, I was just penciling the math. Just last year alone, over $1 billion between your two organizations, right, in sales. It's incredible, right? And so, you know, I mean, I think those are kind of some of the things that people forget along the way, though, right? So I'm going to kind of let's you know, I want to hear what you would say to a day one agent in this market, in this era. You know, what would be the first steps of things you'd say, hey, you know, if you're about to start your journey, this is what I would do, given what I know now.
Well, I think society in general has changed quite a bit, right? Obviously through technology, also through social media, getting information quicker, no matter what it is, whatever platforms you're on. So I think society in general has changed, but I think it's still the same thing that we did, whether it was in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. You know, you have to sit back and actually commit yourself to a career. And then you have to sit here and understand what patience means, right? Because you can't look at a Jimmy Franklin and say, well, Jimmy's doing it, I can do it. It took him time to do that. You can't come out and look at me and say, okay, well, look at him. He's having fun doing TikToks and Instagram Reels and all that. What about all the hours I put in the back, right? You know, in the background. So to go out there, I think today's day and age, you have so much more access to coaching and mentoring and scripts and systems and processes and things that we didn't really have back then. But mainly you have to have patience and you have to think long term. You can't look at, you know, paycheck to paycheck. Even if you are living a paycheck to paycheck, you can't look at it as paycheck to paycheck, right. You know? You have to be able to spread it out and start having a 1 year, 5 year, 7 year, 10-year plan. And I think the number one thing to do is find somebody that's done it successfully ahead of you and go and learn from them. Really, truly, there's so many more avenues of learning from people ahead of you. Don't look at their successes and say, okay, I can do that. Look at what their failures were and see if I can skip past 2 years of what Nimesh failed at, and I can do it all within 6 months now, you know?
Absolutely.
Man, that's exactly. I don't know that I can add anything to that. I had on my mind, you know, coaching is available nowadays, mentorship's available. It's insane how much better it is than it used to be in that world, right? Also, you know, there's social media. Yeah, you have to embrace that. I think you should, because it's available and it's
a lot harder.
It's inexpensive. It's inexpensive versus, you know, versus how, you know, how we had to do it back in those days. And patience, he's right. Patience, you can't, you know, this is an instant gratification world that we live in.
Yes, it is.
You know, because everything is available for us. It's understandable why it would be, you know, why people, you know, why younger people would be that way, because my goodness, it's everything's available now, you know, and it gives people and it's great, it's fantastic, but it also gives, you know, I think it makes people impatient, you know, and if you can't, you know, disconnect the impatience you might have with, you know, entertainment, you know, well, I can go do something, I can go to another song, this sucks. I can go to another TV show or another movie or something, you know, or another YouTube video. That's fine in that world. You might want to like not do that in your career, though. Yeah. You know, don't do that in your career, because that, you know, you have to somehow be able to separate it. But I think that's probably, I've seen a lot of people get out of this business really quick. Never gave it a shot. Right. You know, I had somebody that was going to be great, and they were burned out in their job, and they came on with us, and I knew them, and they you know, within, I don't know, they just decided that the pandemic, you know, in 2020 was going to do everybody in, and they just went right back to the business, you know, right back to what they didn't like doing. And it's like it was never going to be it was never going to be a quick fix on this thing.
Right,
you know?
right, absolutely.
Well, piggybacking off what he said about how many agents don't give it a shot or just don't do it the right way. I mean, look at what HAR membership is right now, 50,000 realtors,
Yeah.
and a lot of them are not doing it for the right reasons, and so that's why they won't be in the industry within 1 year. Definitely not within 5 years. I won't know some of these names, and there's stats for all of that, and they're true. But if either one of us had to talk to somebody and give them one line, I guarantee that one line is going to be patient.
Yeah.
Be patient, because like you said, I mean, talking about my beloved Longhorns, 1 year and we can't win, and they fire the coach.
Be very patient, and you'll be very patient.
You shush. But no, that's the whole point I brought up on this. The society we live in.
Well, sometimes you made a mistake.
Yeah, sometimes you do. Oh, my beloved Cowboys too.
One of the funny things around, there's a story about like the plumber, right? The plumber comes to your house, and a good plumber, he's there for 20 minutes. He moves 2 pipes around, boom, 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 the leak's fixed, and he's out, and you owe him $800. And you're like, oh, that took you 20 minutes. It didn't matter it's not 20 minutes. It's the years he spent knowing exactly what to fix, what pipe to move, and he's out. And he's honed his skills over time, and then converted that into a high value transaction for himself, right? I think the same goes for the real estate community, right? So as you get stronger and stronger, you defend your commissions, right? You know your market, you know your trade, you know how to cross sell with other realtors in the community, right? You've transacted with each other, you know how to navigate. That doesn't happen. And I think the short-sighted agents are like, well, I can't make a deal happen like that, or I'm not seeing the numbers that these guys are seeing, or they come in thinking they can do it overnight, right? And you just can't, right?
Well, you're talking about value, right? What I build is value, what Jimmy builds is value to our consumers, to our customer base. And when those guys don't see what we've had to put in, the time that we've had to put in, the energy, the effort, the money, the long hours that we put in, their only value proposition is, let me just discount the commissions. Yeah. Let me just give away the money, because now suddenly my self-worth is not worth X amount. It's X, X divided by 5,
Yeah.
And that's another mistake, because then that's not a sustainable career. So we're talking about careers. We're not talking about a job that you go to and check off a box. This is a career that you are your own business. Whether you're on a team or not a team, with this brokerage or you're a broker, ultimately you still are an individual agent that is an individual business, the business of you. Yeah. And you got to know your self-worth, and a lot of that self-worth comes with patience, because over time, consistently, you've done some really good things, and your brand and your name and your worth grows.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of round that out, that thought, right? So like in a real estate transaction, even in this modern time, north of 15 to 20 stakeholders at any given time, navigating, you're juggling all the balls, from the title to the insurance to the surveyor, the appraiser, the inspector. It goes on and on and on, right? Title, you name it, right? So all these players, your tenure of knowing who to call, who to navigate, et cetera, that value sometimes is not clear to an end buyer or your client, right? And so we have to convey that, obviously. But hey, don't worry, I got the guy that, or we're going with this title company because we know the service we're going to get, right? Or we've done 50 transactions with them. I assure you it'll be, smooth sailing. Or this is the right lender to pick, or whatever the case may be, right? So like that, it's hard to put the dollar on that, but that's what more than delivers the value, right? The stress-free transactions that you can deliver consistently over the systems you guys have developed to deliver a great first-class experience, right?
The sad part about that, what you just said, is the only time that you actually will see the true service of a Franklin or a Patel transaction is when you're not using one of us and it goes wrong.
Yeah.
And then that's when you actually see, oh, wow. But it's too late then.
I hate to cheese it up to fast food, but the order at McDonald's or Wendy's and order at Chick-fil-A and go through that experience. Without fail, it's always going to be wrong at McDonald's and Wendy's. it's going to be frustrating, and it's going to be, you know, and the worst of it is bad food, right? At least Chick-fil-A, it's a well-oiled machine, you know, and you know what's an oddly common denominator, family-rooted organization, right? Even though they're huge, right?
First you're talking about my Longhorns, now you're talking about my Cowboys, now you're talking about my McDonald's.
I'm sorry. I
love my McDonald's, man.
You're my punching bag today. All right, well, so I'm going to round us out. This has been amazing, right? So I want to, you know, we all say we can't do it, but give me the crystal ball, right? It's a weird era. We're coming out from a high to maybe a low, but, you know, long-term people know that's just part of what happens in the game. But give me an idea of where you see things headed for real estate companies, innovation in our industry, right? And I'm not talking about tech, I'm talking about business models, right? Because everybody's had to rethink this thing, right? And some are thriving, some are not. You know, legacy companies, Remax, Century 21, Keller Williams, et cetera, they're rethinking the wheel, right?
Absolutely.
EXP is a great modern company that's had to force the hand of like rethinking, right?
Absolutely.
But it's not to say that people can't catch up. It's just a curious, it's just, where do you guys see it? You know, you guys currently wear different flags, right? And so I'd love to see the different perspectives.
Well, I think you just hit it best when you said there are legacy companies that are evolving. That's the key word. Everything we do year after year, day after day, we're evolving. And you know, you said it right. Like I have a legacy company, obviously Remax, and love them to death, and had some really good times here, and really done some great things and met some great people. But you know, you have Jimmy, who's over at EXP, and I know a lot of people, not just the Franklins, not just Andrew and them, but a lot of other great people that are doing extremely well. And yeah, they're pushing us to evolve.
Yeah.
And so if you're not open to evolving, whether you're a single agent at your own firm or whether you're a broker or whatever, then I don't think you're going to survive. I don't, you know, the crystal ball, and maybe Jimmy has a way better answer than I do on this, but I don't have a crystal ball. All I know is that I'm going to be constantly changing to make sure that I evolve into what the next best thing is for my consumer at all time. And my consumer as a broker is the agents, and my consumer as a team leader is the actual client, right?
Absolutely.
So I don't have a true crystal ball. All I know is that I'm 100% all in this industry, and I'm going to do whatever it takes, whether having conversations like this with, you know, educated people, watching what other people are doing around the country or around here, masterminding with people, admitting when I'm wrong, admitting that I need to improve, get a CRM properly, you know, whatever it is.
What's that? What's a CRM?
Yeah, doing anything and everything I can to make sure that I'm constantly evolving so I don't get left behind. And I think everybody needs to do the same thing. You know, you said that it's been a pretty crazy market, but that's always the case. I mean, he has better stories or more stories, but I've been doing this for 21 years, and you and I have been doing this together for a while. We've come through, remember in 2007, everyone was like, oh my God, this is the craziest thing ever. Then 2012, oh, this is crazy. Then 2019, I mean, it's just, there's always gonna be something. It's always gonna be something. And if you're gonna just move only when you see and hear those kind of things, then you're gonna get left behind. You just have to consistently be ready to be nimble, and just be able to evolve.
Yeah. Jimmy.
I don't know about a crystal ball, but one of the things that I've, you know, watched happen to me in all my years is all this desire to there's billions of dollars in commissions that are earned in this country, and these companies wanting to get a share of that has created an amazing. This is the best time ever, you know. Just despite, you know, a bad market here or a good market there, whatever. This is the best time in history to be a realtor. When I got in the business in late '82, my commission was 6% to the you know, went to corporate, right? And then I split 50-50 with my broker, despite the fact that I brought the business in. And so I was getting 47% with no cap. That's just how it was. And then Remax came into play. You know, they were new. They didn't have a brand, really. People were like, man, what a goofy colors, you know, a balloon, hot air balloon. and I did my math, and I go, it was a math thing. I was like, I don't think I'm getting anything from this particular broker. Like, I'm going to move over here. This is a really, I give them a certain amount of money, and I have some services that I'm going to receive and all that. We didn't have voicemail yet, but we got that later. And then
Fax machine.
Fax machine came in the late 80s, by the way. Yeah, about my 8th year in the business. So
What if I'm gonna have to explain what a fax machine is?
So, but anyway, to me, that was the beginning of, some company out there recognizing that the realtor was, it was kind of like, sort of like, you got your brokerage here and your realtor is like this guy here, like almost like they were your boss. And then they kind of flipped it and said, no, that's not really how it should be, sort of make your own name, make your own brand. I mean, we couldn't even put our names on signs back before Remax, and Remax basically let us, put pictures on there. Yeah. So, and then Keller Williams came in with a different way of having the similar kind of business, and then later on there was more innovation and more opportunities for agents because brokerages were, hey, what can we do to make agents want to be here with us? Yeah. Which to me has been a great time. It's one of the reasons I didn't come back. I'm not in production. We didn't really talk about that. I'm not in production, but I am more involved in the brokerages and the situation and growing companies and all because of things that brokerages are doing now to attract agents. And so I think that's been kind of the coolest thing that I've seen. Did not answer your question about my crystal ball, but I did tell you, but I think you could probably take what I'm saying and say, well, at least on that, there's no reason to think that's going to stop.
And here's what I'm deducing from literally what both of you have
Here he goes rewriting our stuff.
So, it's going to make it sound better.
No, so well, it doesn't matter which brokerage you're at. It's just a platform, right? Which now, modern agents, they have a new way to market, right? You came from it's amazing. You came from an era where you couldn't even have your picture, right, on your advertising. Right. And fast forward to now, you have to be an influencer, right? It's all about your picture. It's all about, leveraging the social media platforms and networks, right? So that part doesn't matter, but I'm gonna it's perfect rounding out of what we hit on earlier. This industry is about, and y'all can say it at the same exact time, building relationships, right? So it doesn't matter which flag you wear because the relationships are driven by you as an individual, right? And so that's full circle. That's the conversation, right? The platforms, they're going to evolve, they're going to mature, they're going to innovate, they're going to be different, but the individual real estate career is driven about authenticity, building relationships, and a long-term outlook, right? That's what we talk about
patience with an outlook,
right? I think that's in my mind, still, tale as old as time, the recipe for success. Whether you were using fax machines, text message, whatever. I'll round this out on a funny story. I had a meeting with another entrepreneur friend, and he's like, "Have you seen the way the world has turned?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? And how we communicate?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "Well, we went from old school rotary phones, right, to email." To but if you think archaic times, it was hieroglyphics, pictures on a wall. And he was like, well, what do we share now? We share emojis on a phone. We're back to hieroglyphics. And I was like, oh my God, you're absolutely right. That's literally what we do. And so it's like we've gone back to, so it repeats, the world will continue to repeat. Well, this has been amazing. You guys have been, I've been humbled and honored to be in a room with you both. Thank you for taking the time and sharing your stories. Can't wait to do this again. We got to do it. Maybe at a football game. I don't know which team at this point because we've had them all apparently. But thank you, Jimmy.
Well, can we after UT beats Alabama tomorrow? Can we get together and do this again?
UT beats Alabama tomorrow. We are getting together again.
I'll share y'all's contact info on the platform for anybody that wants to get in touch. But thank you both again. This has been fantastic.
All right. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you both.
Enjoyed it.